Hi, this is your professor, Professor Paparozzi, and today I'm going to cover in several videos why it's so important to write well. In addition, I'll also cover the mechanics of good writing. Now, before I begin the lesson, I want to explain to you something very important. I was not a good writer in college either. I had to learn to write well, and I did not do it before I entered college, even though I assumed I was a good writer. But I remember the mistakes now with great shame because here I am teaching writing, but it wasn't until I started teaching writing when I was in my early 20s that I became a very proficient writer. So don't feel bad if you're making mistakes right now. I made the same mistakes as you made, I'm sure. And when I had to teach writing in a job that I got right out of college, and I remember I worked in prisons when I was in college, but when I graduated from college, I came back to New Jersey, where I was from, where my parents and my family lived. And one of my sisters helped me get a job at a community college, and the job I got was teaching basic writing skills. And that's when I learned teaching grammar and punctuation and writing skills. That's when I learned to become a very proficient writer. So don't feel bad if you're making mistakes and I'm constantly correcting your grammar. I'm doing that for you to make you have the same powerful tool that I've always had, which is excellent writing skills. I can't tell you how important it is to be a good writer. And in your generation, and I've seen it with my own children who are in their 20s right now, they grew up texting and IMing and doing all kinds of abbreviations. But since I worked on their writing skills, they've always done really well with writing. But they had to walk away from the texting and IMing in order to be able to write really well. And I also think there's a disadvantage because reading on Kindles and all that kind of stuff may be easy. But when you're reading a book and you can read it over and over again on the same page, you start picking up the cues that good writing gives. And that's what I want to explain to you real quickly. Punctuation, grammar, they're to give you cues as to what the writer or the speaker is saying. So when I tell you a comma's in the wrong place, it's because you're giving the wrong cue when you put your comma in the wrong place. A comma is meant for a short pause. A period is meant for a longer pause. And so when you use these things, you're giving bad cues when you use them incorrectly. So that's why I harp on these. And by the way, even our textbook authors are not good writers. I've been catching a lot of their mistakes, not just officer illiterate, but many of the mistakes they made throughout it, misusing a form of punctuation or whatever. And by the way, you have the greatest tool of all. You have the internet. So if you're not sure if a semicolon is correct, go and read the rule. Put as how to use the semicolon and read the rule. A lot of people misuse the semicolon, and I did too until I had to teach it. But now, honestly, at the age of 61, I don't make very many grammatical errors. And of course, if I did, my older sisters would always catch them. They all have a very strong background in writing. Okay, so look at your reference guide, Grammar, Spelling, and Punctuation for Criminal Justice Writing and Rhetoric that I posted on in your course documents and emailed you all about yesterday. So even if under number 1, you see under rules of grammar, we have rules of grammar so our people who speak English can communicate correctly. And these are the most common grammatical errors. And we're going to start with number 2, subject-verb agreement. Now, I went to Catholic school and I had nuns that drilled subject-verb agreement into my head. So we had to say, I am, you were, I am, you are, he, she, it is, etc. But I've noticed in a lot of speech, a lot of singers, a lot of acting and so forth, they misuse grammar and we learn it as if it is correct. But trust me, very few people speak grammatically correct. Even on the news, they'll make a lot of mistakes. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot in my students' work is subject-verb agreement. So if you have a single subject, like in the first example, I saw the movie last week. For some reason, people are saying, I've seen the movie. Well, I doesn't go with seen unless you say, I have seen. Okay? So you want to make sure you understand, does I go with see, with saw, or do I go with see? It has to agree. And I goes with saw. And if you're going to a different tense because you saw something and then you have seen it in the past, you would say, I have seen. But now you can't have I seen, he seen, she seen. Seen must always come with the verb have. The verbs have, has, or had. I have seen, I had seen, he has seen. So never put seen all by itself. Okay, and you can never say, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. It's incorrect. I have been doing this, I have been doing that. Okay, or you can abbreviate it to I've, I apostrophe V-A. And you can't say I done this or I done that. That's also incorrect. You have to say I did this or I did that or I have done this. Remember, seen, done. These are called past participles. They must come with a helper verb called an auxiliary verb, and they must come with a have, has, or had. Okay. And of course, you can't say we was. That's also incorrect, which of course we hear a lot in movies and so forth. It's we were, and it's now. And this is a real common mistake that even I made in college. When we say I would have, we hear the word of, but it's the word have. I would have, I should have. So of is never part of a verb form, although you hear it. So I can understand why you put it, but don't put it anymore, okay? Now, sometimes we get tricked up by multiple word subjects. Now, the subject of the sentence, as you know, is the person doing the action in the sentence, and sometimes we have two subjects or three, depending on our sentence. So, for example, under the letter A, incorrect. The judge and jury was unpersuaded by Smith's testimony. Well, I know that probably sounds bad to you, which is a good way of knowing if something is poorly done. The judge and jury now are two, so that's like saying they. And you wouldn't say they was, you would say they were. So the judge and jury were unpersuaded. Now you can get tricked up when you have words like neither or each, etc. So incorrect is neither the defendant nor his counsel were prepared. Now it sounds like there's two subjects, but it's saying one or the other. So it's neither the defendant nor his counsel was. So it's saying one or the other. It's not saying both. So that's why you would use was, which is for a singular subject, and it's a singular verb. Okay? Go down to the next word that says incorrect. Now this one is the one that drives me the craziest, and I know that we've seen this before in some of our classes. Does everyone have their ticket to the movie? Well, what word is in everyone? The word one. One, like one person. So everyone is not a group of people, it's everyone. We're talking about one person. Everyone have his ticket. So you can't use anything that's singular, has to have singular pronouns. And the singular pronouns are it, he, his, she, her. And that's it. Or you, of course, you and your. But in this particular case, so if you hear someone, no one, anyone, everybody, you're talking about one person. And so don't make that mistake. Use a singular pronoun with a singular noun or previous, whatever it is. In this case, it's another pronoun, everyone. Okay, so does everyone have his ticket? Does everyone have her ticket? Or you can do what a lot of people do. Does everyone have his or her ticket? That's fine too, okay? But not their. And I hear this on the newscasters all the time, using their instead of a singular pronoun. There is a plural pronoun. It goes with they, which means plural. Okay, now another one that tricks people up is the word each. So each of these incidents involve a customer, blah, blah, blah. But it's each is each one. Each of these incidents involves. Now, when you see an S on the end of a verb, now you know it's singular, and that's the cue. If there's an S, it's singular. So each of these incidents involves a customer. So each one is what you want to hear in your head, each one. Now, somebody is another one. That's somebody. It's not bodies, which would be plural, but somebody, so it's singular. Somebody forgot to file his papers, not their papers. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. I didn't make up these rules, okay? And when your child loses their confidence is the next sentence. The child is one person. I don't care if you have 50 children, but you're saying when your child, not your children, because when your children lose their confidence, that's one thing. But when your child, child is singular, you must have a singular pronoun referring to it. So when your child loses his confidence, when your child loses her confidence, when your child loses his or her confidence. Remember, it's singular, so look for the singular pronouns. It and its, its, which is the possessive, not it apostrophe s, but its, which most of you are getting right. His, him, her. And so those are the ones, okay? So stick with the singular pronouns, excuse me. All right, collective nouns are nouns that stand for a group of people or items, for example, the jury. And a lot of people think that, it's the jury, so it's plural. Well, it's not. Jurors, the word jurors is plural, but the word jury is singular because there's only one jury. There's a lot of people in it, but there's only one group, and it's called a jury. So the jury have adjourned. Well, that sounds terrible, but the jury has adjourned. So when you're using that to make, see there's that S again on has, H-A-S, singular. So we know that the jury is singular and the verb going with it must agree and be singular as well. The court is discussing the plaintiff's right to a speedy trial. That's pretty easy. But now, when you have the jurors, we know that's plural, so you use have. The jurors have adjourned to deliberate the defendant's guilt. The members of the court are discussing the plaintiff's right to a speedy trial. So members is plural, so the verb is plural, are discussing. And a lot of times we have intervening words that really trick us up. That's the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3. Words like the remainder of the goods. So we have to look to see if remainder is singular or should we go with goods. And it can be a little bit different at times, but most of the time the default rule is that if the remainder is the subject of the sentence, the word remainder, that's singular, so we're going to use a singular verb like is. Again, the S is right on there to tell you that it's singular. The purpose of the will left by the decedents is to provide for their children. Decedents mean the people who survive somebody. So again, the purpose is the subject of the sentence. The purpose, not the will, not the decedents. The purpose is the subject of the sentence, the doer. And it goes with the verb is, which again ends in an S. Letter D, prepositional phrases. So when you have a prepositional phrase, a preposition is words like of, on, at, it, if, etc. They're like connecting words that, and we use them all the time in speech, and one of the best teachers, blah, is available. One, and then of the best teachers. One of, so the word of tells you you're gonna, whatever comes after it may be a prepositional phrase. So let's look at it. One of the best teachers. So of the best teachers is your prepositional phrase. In other words, it's a phrase that began with a preposition. So of course we want to go to the word one. Okay, so one of the best teachers is available. Again, is singular, one is singular, and if you took out of the best teachers, the sentence still makes sense. One is available. We don't know one of what, but we still know that that's a complete sentence because that is a subject, verb, and expresses a complete thought. Now, a lot of times you want to set off some prepositional phrases because they're in a positive, they're extra information for a sentence. In the next case, the deposition, along with many exhibits, shows the defendant was speeding. So the deposition is the subject of the sentence, and so the deposition is going to control what verb we use. But then we have this prepositional phrase, along with many exhibits. That's what we call a positive. It's extra information, so we set it off with commas. Whereas in the first one, it wasn't really extra information. One of the best teachers is available. Of the best teachers is a prepositional phrase, but it really wasn't extra. It was important to the sentence. It was essential. But in the next one, the deposition shows the defendant was speeding. That could stand on its own as expressing everything you needed to know. But in this case, they wanted to add some additional information in the prepositional phrase, so we set it off with commas because it's not essential. So the deposition, comma, along with many exhibits, comma, shows the defendant was speeding. And we use was there, again it ends in an, shows there, again it ends in an S, so it's singular in the present tense, is because the deposition itself is singular. The deposition, there's no S on it, so we know it's one deposition. Okay, so that's singular. In summary, always carefully scrutinize your writing to identify what the subject is. If you have any doubt, just say who, what, where, when, why. Who is the doer of the sentence? Who is doing the action of the sentence? So if you read the deposition along with many exhibits shows the defendant was speeding, well, what shows the defendant is speeding? The deposition. Okay? And that helps you figure out what the subject is. And the verb, of course, is shows, because anything that's the action of the sentence or the verb to be, like is in the first one, one of the best teachers is available. Is the verb because it's the verb to be is always going to be part of the verb of the sentence unless it's being used in a different expression, which we can get to at other times. Okay, so that's number 1 and 2. Sentence fragments drive me absolutely crazy. Every sentence must have a subject, like we've talked about, a verb, like we just talked about, either an action verb or a verb to be like is, are, you are, whatever. And it must express a complete thought. So you can say, I am. That doesn't really express a complete thought. I am your professor does express a complete thought. Now, why did I say I am could be a sentence? Because it has the subject, I, which is always capitalized, and it has one of the verbs to be, I am. Okay, however, it doesn't really tell me anything. Of course, it's not in biblical times. Yes, it told me that I am is another name for God. But in normal speech, you wouldn't say I am. You would say I am present, I am Mark, I am Judy, I am Mario. You would express a complete thought. So you have to, for a sentence to be a sentence, you must have a subject that you can identify, a verb that you can identify, and you must be able to identify what the complete thought is that's being expressed. So that's why you can't start sentences with words like meaning or being, because most of the time you don't end up having a subject, verb, and a complete thought. You must have all three. So what we have done, though, in the English language is we've connected two complete sentences together, and we have to make sure that we have a complete sentence, proper punctuation in the second complete sentence. Otherwise, it's a run-on sentence like we'll see in number 4. Okay. So let's look at the incorrect under number 3. I gained 2 valuable lessons. First, the importance of being bilingual. Second, the need to understand a different culture. Well, let's take these 3 sentences and let's look at them and use our 3 rules, subject, verb, and a complete thought. I gained 2 valuable lessons. It's a perfect sentence. I is the subject, gain is the verb, and it expresses a complete thought. So whoever wrote this gained 2 valuable lessons. Now let's look at the next one. First comma, which is correct. Put a comma after first. Okay, first comma, second comma, that's perfect. The importance of being bilingual. Well, the importance of being bilingual, that's all fine for a subject, but where's the verb? And you can't say the word being because being is not being used as a verb here. It's being used as part of a prepositional phrase beginning with the word of being bilingual. Okay, so you can correct it. Or you can simply you can figure out a lot of different ways of correction, but it's not a sentence. You can't do it. And then second, the need to understand a different culture. Well, the need, it could be the subject. To understand a different culture is not your verb. A verb must agree with the subject. The need understands. I mean, it doesn't work. So let's see how it's corrected. This is the best way to correct it. It's to join them together with a colon when you're going to have a list. Now, real important. Anything before the colon must be a standalone sentence. You can't have it ending with include. You have to have a complete sentence. My children include, and then colon, no. My children include the following kids, semicolon, and then you have to list it. So whatever comes before you put the colon has to be a complete sentence. There must be a subject, I, there must be a verb, gained, and it must express a complete thought. Then you can use the colon and then list something behind it. On the other side of the colon now, you don't have to have complete sentences. The first, the importance of being bilingual, and second, the need to understand a different culture. Okay, perfectly punctuated and everything. Or you can do it even easier. Or excuse me, another way. I gained 2 important lessons, period. Perfect sentence, which we know. The first lesson was the importance of being bilingual. See now, the first lesson was the importance of being bilingual. Oh, now we have a subject, the first lesson, and a verb, was, the verb to be, great, comma, and the second lesson, that's the subject, was, that's the verb, the need to understand a different culture. Perfect, it expressed a complete thought. Absolutely perfect. I like both ways that they were done. The second way is even better in my view. Okay, now this next example underneath, I like show music, meaning shows like Grease. So many of you do this and make this mistake that I've seen in many of the papers that I've corrected in my 7 or 8 years at Pembroke. Please never start a sentence with the word meaning. There is no sentence that can start with the word meaning that I can think of, okay? Meaning, so look how it's done. Corrected. I like show music like the show, comma, Grease. We use the comma to set off the fact that we're going to talk about a show called Grease. Never, ever, ever start a sentence with meaning. So what is meaning shows like Greek? Is there a subject? No, it's in the previous sentence. Is there a verb? No. ING always has to come with the verb to be. Okay, so is meaning, was meaning, it's not there. Meaning by itself with ing can never stand alone as a verb. Anything with ing never stands alone as a subject verb. It has to have the verb to be with it. Okay, so that's why we know. All right, we're going to go over run-on sentences, which I've already started, and then we're going to stop this video and start another one. this is one of my pet peeves. Run-on sentences are two sentences that are complete sentences, written correctly, but don't have the proper punctuation to connect them. Okay, so look at the incorrect one. The members of the jury were deadlocked, comma, they could not reach a verdict. A comma can never join two complete sentences. Only a semicolon or a period. Well, period would separate two complete sentences. A semicolon could join them together. So there are three ways of fixing this sentence, which we'll go over now. The first one, a comma implies a very short pause, whereas a semicolon implies a longer pause, which is fine, but it's not as long as a period. So you're cueing when you do a comma. You can't just use a comma to connect two complete sentences. The members of the jury were deadlocked. That's a complete sentence. We have the members, subject, were, verb, and it expressed a complete thought. The members of the jury were obviously deadlocked. Second part, they could not reach a verdict. That could stand on its own because they as the verb, could not reach is the, they as the subject and could not reach is the verb, and it expresses a complete thought about the verdict, okay? But you can't put a comma only. Now, if you want to usually use one piece of punctuation and not even have it capitalize a second sentence, you would use the semicolon. A period with a comma underneath it is a semicolon. That implies that pause that I mentioned. That's the easiest way to do it. The other easy way is to just separate the two sentences. Remember, we know that they're complete sentences by a period. The members of the jury were deadlocked, period. They could not reach a verdict, period. You hear two complete thoughts expressed in both sentences because they have a subject, verb, and each expresses a complete thought. And the final way, which is the most common way, is to use a conjunction with your comma. So the comma is not incorrect. It's just incorrect when it's alone. So here, the members of the jury were deadlocked, comma, and, or since they could not reach a verdict. Since is a conjunction. And is a conjunction. But is a conjunction. For is a conjunction. There are many conjunctions. You can look them up on the internet. But when you're connecting two sentences together, two complete sentences, you either use the semicolon and connect the two sentences that way. You separate them by a period and do the proper capitalization of the second sentence. Or the second easiest way is to use the comma, which I have here, with a conjunction. Okay, we're going to move to another part on another topic of split infinitives, which is very easy as well. Bye.